is up, guys? TechBits here. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a great $300 budget gaming PC. Let's get right into it. So guys, in today's video, we're going to be looking at the $300 gaming PC, and I have it set up right here actually, and I think it's very pretty for the $300 budget, and it's got plenty of RGB and everything that, as you can see. So we're going to be talking about all of the core specs of this thing, how you can build it. I'm going to have a build guide towards the end of the video, so if you want to see all the specs and everything right now and how it performs, go ahead, watch that part. I will have timestamps down below so you can also see how to build it. Now this isn't going to be an insane in-depth review of how to build it, so I will have a link in the description of my full in-depth review on how to build a gaming PC, but this should be good enough to get you this one built. So first of all, let's get right into the specs of this computer. The specs of the computer are an i5-2400. Now this is through a Dell Optiplex, so this was parted out. The graphics card is an RX 570, 4GB. That is going to be with a 4-pin power connector for power consumption and all that. Then RAM is 8GB. The SSD is a 120GB SSD. Then a hard drive in it is a 500GB hard drive. So we're going to have plenty of room to have an OS and maybe some games on the side. Then you can always have room to upgrade later. So the case is the Cougar, or how you want to pronounce it, MG-120-G. Now this case is an insanely great deal. For the price of only about $40, you get full tempered glass. You get enough room to put enough fans. You can mount about 6 fans in this entire case, about 5 to 6, depending on how you do it. Then there's just tempered glass that looks great about it. So that's the reason why I chose this case. Then the cooler for the CPU is the Thermaltake UX100. Then the power supply that we are running with is the Apivia 450 watt, just kind of a budget power supply you can get on Amazon. Now, everything on this PC looks great with the RGB, and the RGB that mostly comes from the fans is from the Up Here RGB 3-pack of fans you can get on Amazon. Again, I'm going to have all of this stuff linked down below, so be sure to check that stuff out. But this PC is going to be great for anybody who wants to get into some starting film editing or any of that, making YouTube videos or something. And this thing plays games pretty well compared to what you could probably build for $300 elsewhere for brand new parts. Now, a lot of these parts came from Amazon and eBay. You might have to get one of the parts on Newegg, but there is parts on eBay from the Newegg kind of page. So, as I said, this PC is going to be great for film editing and all that. I was able to edit almost 4K footage, being able to scan through a timeline on Adobe Premiere, very great. And I also wanted to show you guys the gaming specs, so let's get into some benchmarks. So as you guys just seen, those games were great on the computer, and for only $300, as I said, that is just a steal in my opinion. So that is one of the biggest reasons I would say you should build this computer. Now there are some downsides to the computer. So there's no USB 3.0 ports. Now you can also get an expansion card for one of the bottom PCI slots, but that is not included with the $300 budget, but I can link it down in the description for one to get. Now another thing that you do not have is audio on the front part of the case. You do have it on the back of the case, or the back of the motherboard I could say, so there's no need to worry about not having audio, but you just won't have it for the front of the case. Then you also don't have a reset button or a kind of like LED button. I could say like on the power, there's no like light up on it, but it still functions and everything, which is great. So those are the only downsides. The only reason because of that is the Dell Optiplex motherboard. Now I will have a kind of toward the end of the video, you can see it's not towards the end, but it's like kind of right after this first part of me explaining the computer. You will be able to see how I remove the motherboard and everything from the Dell Optiplex. So if you want to continue watching, you'll be able to check that out. But overall, this is probably one of the best $300 budget builds I have done. I did one previously, but I feel like this one kind of just tops it up. My previous one had a 470 in it, which is not 570 obviously. It did have 16 gigabytes of RAM, but I feel like 8 gigabytes right now is still enough to play most games. This can stream while gaming, but you're going to be very limited to your kind of resolution on your games and your FPS. So that is one of the downsides as well. But as I said, this is a $300 budget gaming PC, so with 300 bucks, you're basically going to get that kind of experience. Now, do I think this would be a good kind of comparison to like an Xbox Series S that's going to be coming out? Well, yes, I think it would be a good comparison to it, because when you're going from an Xbox to like a PC or PlayStation to PC, it's not about how well it plays the game sometimes, it's just about overall the user experience. And I think that what you get with this PC, with all the RGB, and I think it looks great, then you also have Windows, which obviously you don't have Windows on a like Xbox or PS4. So that's another good thing about having kind of that $300 budget. So this thing is also pretty upgradable. The card in there is not mined on or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. But my previous one had to be it was mined on, and it had an adapter to go to DVI to HDMI, which is kind of another bad thing in my opinion. But overall, I think with the tempered glass being kind of tinted, you also don't even see the green kind of PCB on the motherboard, so that's another great thing about it. But yeah, that's basically the computer. And as I said, if you stick around to the end of the video, I will be able to show you how to build it. But if you're leaving now, thank you for watching. Continue if you want to keep continuing to watch how to build a computer. So let's get right in how to build this thing. So guys, the first thing that you are going to want to do is grab that Dell Optiplex and go ahead and start to pull out the motherboard. Now when you're pulling out this motherboard, just get everything out of it and just kind of watch through what I did, and that should help you out. So once you have the motherboard removed, go ahead and grab your CPU cooler and pull that little black bracket out of it. Then take these little plastic clips and put it in between the middle slot of those two little things in there. And go ahead and do that for all 4 of them. So then once you have that done, go ahead and push that onto there. You will need to remove the little back plate on the back of the motherboard as well for that to fit in there. Then grab your thermal paste. You can use the included or you can use some extra. I have used some extra to get a little bit of performance. Then go ahead and put a nice little dot on there just to spread evenly. Then once you're done with that, you're going to take these little black pegs. They are going to be on the side. They're going to look like just plastic. Put them in there. Do not push them in fully because you're going to need to push them in with something that can kind of have a point to it, such as a screwdriver. Once you get that done, go ahead and, as I said, you're going to want to take that screwdriver and kind of just poke them in there, put some pressure on each one. Make sure you do it in kind of a cross pattern. That'll kind of help with stability, keeping the CPU cooler in there. So then once you're done with that, go ahead and grab your cooler and you're going to want to find the smaller latch without kind of the thing that pushes it in there, and set it towards the front of the, or take the one that doesn't have the latch on it, just a smaller one, and put it on the back, and use the front one to just push it on in there, and that should install the CPU cooler, and you should be good to go from there. So once you're done with that, you're going to want to prep your case, so go ahead, pull off that front panel of the case, and we're going to start installing standoffs. So to install the standoffs, we're just going to put it in the holes that do not already have standoffs in them. Now this case comes with standoffs, so you're fine, and you might need to use some pliers or something to put them in. I have a little tool that does fit them, but go ahead and fit them in the way that the motherboard would be put in there. So guys, now it's time for the IO shield. So for the IO shield, you're just going to want to grab it from the one that you got in your Dell Optiplex. Then once you get it, I can't really see it through this angle, but make sure the 2 big holes are at the top and the 3 ones are at the bottom. That should help you out tremendously with installing it. Then just pop it in there with little force, but I would still try to be careful with what you are doing with it, since they are kind of fragile. Then after that, we're going to remove the back or the rear case fan. Now I'm using a drill to do this. You can use a screwdriver, whatever works. Just pop all those fan screws out of there, and you should be good to go with removing that fan. Now you can use this fan at the top of the case if you're wanting to, but I'm just not going to use it since it doesn't really fit the vibe of the case. Now once you have got all those fans removed and everything like that, go ahead and grab your motherboard and install it to the case. Make sure your IO shield is in there. Try to be pretty careful when installing with it. These motherboards are pretty tough, but just be careful as possible. Then just try to align the standoffs with the holes on the motherboard. So that should be a pretty simple process for you to do. Then once you have that installed, go ahead and grab these little smaller screws. They're going to look like this, and that's what is going to install the motherboard, and just screw them all in. I recommend doing it in a cross pattern. So guys, once you get to that point, we're going to start installing the storage. Now we're going to take that SSD of ours, and we're just going to mimic us popping it in there. Then you're going to grab those little small screws, kind of the same ones you used to put in the motherboard. And I'm just going to use 2 because that's really all you need. And just kind of do it in a cross pattern on the back of it, and that'll install the SSD. So now that we've done that, we're just going to set the SSD to the side. And on the back of the case, there's going to be a little hard drive tray. So once we pull out that hard drive tray, that's going to be the tray for our 500 gigabyte hard drive. And we're just going to take our drive, so once you have the drive, go ahead and get ready to put it in the tray. Make sure the little the SATA and the SATA power ports are facing downwards to the out of where you'll be putting it in there. Then it should just pop in. You won't need any screws. You might have to kind of just be careful not to break the plastic or anything like that. But that should install the hard drive. Now just go ahead and pop these things back into place, and you should be all good to go. For our next step, we're going to be installing the fans. Now these fans are the up here RGB fans, as I said. So just kind of follow the steps, or not the steps of how I put them in there. And everything that you will need is already included with the fans, so no need to worry about losing anything like that. But you should be good to go with all fans, so just get those installed and we'll be on to our next step. Another thing that I would like to mention is that there's going to be, for the power connector, you're going to need to only use your one power connection, and you're just going to pull off the little black tab at the top of the motherboard. There was going to be one. I used pliers to do it, and so that should help you out. Now that we have all that done, let's go ahead and get ready to install the power supply. So now grab your a PVIA 450 watt power supply, and go ahead and set it like that to where the red fan in it is facing down and not up. Now grab the screws that came with it, and we're just going to screw it into the back of the case. So we're just going to use our Phillips screwdriver, and we're going to try and align the power supply to the back of the case. Now this will just align everything, and we'll just start screwing that in. So once we have those all situated, go ahead and grab your adapters that you're going to be needing. So the one we're going to grab here is the 3-fan to Molex, and we're going to find the Molex cable on your power supply. And once you grab that, you can also route your other cables through there, but just make sure that you are able to just kind of stay functional and able to cable manage all right with the cables like that. So we're only going to be using a 4-pin on our motherboard for the CPU, so only worry about one of those, and kind of just to situate the cables like I do in the video. Now I took the 2 SATAs and put them towards the right of the case, and one of the SATAs would connect to the GPU, so that's going to be the SATA to the 8-pin PCI connector, and just pop that in there, and that's going to connect the graphics card. So once you see those, just go ahead and kind of situate those like that, and that's going to connect to the 3-pin fan. And you can connect those to whatever fans. Just make sure all the fan connectors, especially the CPU connector, has a power to it. So one thing is we're only going to be using the power switch, as I said early on in the video. So go ahead and just grab that one and pull it back from the rest, giving it a nice little distance away from all the other cables. And then we're just going to route it through over there. Then that's going to connect to the things where you remove the black tabs, I guess I could say. Then we're going to be using the USB. And we're only going to be using the USB 2.0, so don't worry about the 3.0 one. So just route all those cables, and then we're just going to rotate the case and start plugging them in. Now, for all these cables, they should be pretty simple to install. If we look right over here, we're looking at basically all the cables that are already ready to go. So put that power supply cable, plug that in. That's going to be your 24-pin. Make sure the tab is facing outwards or wherever it can connect to the other tab on the connector. Then just kind of cable manage them out so they're not too in the way. Then if we go ahead and grab our power connector, that's just going to go right up in the spot where you did remove that. So as you can see right here, I have that plastic tab, and I put it on the far left with the power switch facing out, the lettering facing out. So it's kind of a weird thing to do, but that's how the PC will turn on. So once you have that in, it'll look kind of like that, and then we're just going to install the other cables. So for the other cable, we're going to install the USB, and that's going to go in the pins on the bottom. It should say USB on them. As I said, I'm going to have a more detailed build guide in the description below if you can't really understand these parts, or you can just go watch someone else's. Then we're going to connect the 4-pin CPU cable, and if one of them doesn't fit, try the other one. It might just be some way they connect, but typically the one on the far right should connect to it. So once we have all those plugged in, we should be good to go on the cables. Now on the back, we're just gonna situate them and make sure we got all the cables good. Now this just basically kind of gets into cable management as well, and we can also plug in other drives and fans. So the first thing that we're probably gonna want to do is just route these cables in the right direction. So we're just gonna grab all these cables right here, kind of just bungee them up together. So they're just kind of out of the way. The case does come with zip ties, so we can use those zip ties. Then that should put those out of the way. And you guys can cable manage however you want. I'm not that great at it, but this should do for you. Just to get them all out of the way. And make sure you have a pair of cutters, just to make sure that they can cut out of the zip ties or scissors, whatever you want to use. So we're just going to continue kind of cable managing, and then we're just going to close up the case. So just kind of bring that 8-pin GPU through the bottom of the case, just prepare to put the graphics card in. Then just throw that front panel on, and we should be good to go. So now that we're ready to install the graphics card, it may be kind of a tight fit, so you're going to have to kind of remove the tabs on the RAM. So make sure you do that. But this is only for my graphics card. You may have to you can just use a different one. But just kind of put the graphics card in there, and while you're holding it, I might probably link down to different RX 570. But if this is the same thing, you do have to kind of hold it in there just to make sure it does fit, because the SATA ports and everything kind of do block the way the GPU does sit in there. So that's one reason why it might be kind of difficult to install the graphics card. But other than that, it should be a pretty simple process. Just kind of push it in there, give it some push. If it feels like you're going too much, just kind of lay off on it. But if you can feel like it's gone in there, then you should be good to go. So I basically just put it like that. It was a pretty simple process. So then once we were done with that, we went ahead and we grabbed our power connector. And as I said, this is going to be an 8-pin, and it's just going to plug in to the GPU. Now, typically all RX 570s should be an 8-pin power connector, but I'm just checking to make sure that the thing is all nicely in there. Then we're just going to plug that power connector right on in there. Then it should just pop nicely, and I grabbed a zip tie just to kind of make it cable manage a little bit nicer with the power cable that the adapter that I was using, so I just ended up using that one. So right now I have the Windows OS boot drive in the top of the computer with the USB slot. When you turn the computer on, all the fans should start to turn on, and it should look pretty cool with all the RGB and stuff. But you want to click F12 right when that screen comes up, and you might need to continue to like an F2. Well, we're just going to click F2. Then that'll bring up what drives we need to go with your SSD, or your USB drive, or your external hard drive, whatever you're using. Then it'll just pop up with a Windows screen, and that's when you know it's going good, and you should be good to go with that. So you want to be on this screen once you're done, and it'll be like a purple Windows screen or something like that. We're just going to click Next, Install Now. This should say Setup is starting. Sometimes it might take a little bit, but we should be able to get going pretty quickly. Now we're going to click I don't have a product key, since I don't have one. If you do have one, more than welcome, put it in there, and you can kind of just continue to the next process. We're going to go with Windows 10 Pro. Then we're going to click I accept the terms. Just click Next. I'm going to click Custom Install, and just click the SSD for the install, so it should be the smaller drive out of the two. And just wait for this to be done loading. Once you're all done with that, you're going to get this screen, and that's basically what the computer should look like when it's done as well. But that's basically all you have to do to build this computer. I hope you guys enjoyed. As I said, I'm going to have links down below for everything that you will need, but that's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. Be sure to check out more of my videos, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.